runoff quality and the downstream impacts of that. I think there are issues there for irrigators in terms of their social licence to operate. And there's a connected thing that's a little bit left field perhaps, which is not about a social licence to operate, but just being clear about water implications. As irrigators become more water use efficient through infrastructure or better technologies on their properties, there is often a reduction in the return flows back to the river system from leaky irrigation systems. That is a loss of water for the environment downstream that is not always captured as well as it could be in our water accounting of downstream available environmental water.
Okay, thank you. Another question? Yeah, right at the front.
You were talking about the super trawler and this issue of social licence from what I've observed in the last couple of years. I think what people are concerned about is the decisions are being made for people in rural Australia by noisy misses from the minority or city-based majority, whatever you want to call it, through social media or whatever it is. And that's probably something that I think probably appeals more to common sense, because super trawler became then an issue of semiotics almost, and then it became politicised, and to say they're achieving the same thing just in a different way. So if it's anti-science and it's misinformed information that's being fed into policy making decisions, that to me is what people get more concerned about.
Agree, but I think a lot of this sort of going back, it runs off values and it runs deep, and it's about trust and confidence, and so sort of capital. And I've found myself defending Australia's rice industry at far too many dinner parties, really, to draw the conclusion that the rice industry has a high level of community, broad community support. I don't think it does. And I don't think that's good news, but I think it's the real situation. Okay, yes, up there.
I'd just like to make a comment in relation to things said about social licence and the rice industry. I'm a rice grower, and we have an environmental champions program, and it's an accredited process of developing in response, and it was developed a while ago, in response to developing that trust and integrity that we have. And I think the production processes will reflect some of that. But to me, and I'm like Laurie, I'm very proud of what I do, of what I found, that's what we produce. To me, the greatest integrity that I can pass on as both a rice grower and a wheat grower and a canola grower and a cattle grower is the quality of our food that we produce. And that, to me, is the most important thing that we do, and that's where I ultimately build my social licence. It's not about defending my production system in the wider community. It's actually about that ultimate point in which people eat the food that I produce, and it's the quality that they expect, with the system delivering it to them in the manner that they do. But I also think that much of this debate about social licence and integrity and trust is that we've got such strong divisions between urban and rural landscapes, and those discussions have to be fairly and I hope we continue to do it.
Thank you. Any comments from the panel?
I guess, I understand all that. I guess the observation I'd make that increasingly it's a globally connected food production system that we're part of. The majority of the rice grown here is exported to other parts of the world, where I imagine the consumers have very little understanding of the conditions in which it's grown and possibly don't even care. And that is a challenge for the industry, and likewise for the food that we import into this country. Often we probably don't know too much about where it was grown or how it was produced. And I think improving the accreditation and the QA and the information around production systems so that people do know what they're buying, what they're consuming, is a good thing for all people in that system.
Thank you. This question here. Can I just ask people to introduce themselves?
Sorry, I'm David Boyd. I'm a
Is it what?
excellent presentation. about 5 back before we went to the org, he had a slide with a lot of dot points. There were 2 pretty hard-hitting dot points which he referred to. I just wonder whether he would like to talk about them.
Oh, you're challenging me now.
One was the lower lakes.
Yeah.
Australian thing. The other one was about the lack of breakdown, I think, in relationship with the irrigators and Railway Basin Authority, or worse to that effect.
States, I thought.
Yeah, look, it's more what we're seeing with a bit of concern. Yeah, what we're seeing with a bit of concern is.
No, back.
Are you there?
Yeah, look, it's of concern to us particularly that when the states and the authority aren't, they're begging to differ. I might put it that way at the moment. And I think there are a lot of nuts and bolts activities that happen at the moment, and if we're going to have outcomes from the basin, things like benchmark, we've got to invest in that. And I'm not saying it's the state government's fault. I'm not saying it's the authority's fault, but people have got to get together because we expect advances. In our sector, and what also worries me a little bit, I'll say, is that at the moment there are one group of people that are being billed, and that's irrigators. They've all got our addresses, and we regularly write out cheques for that. And I think to just pass off our community service obligations to the community of running this water system, I do have concerns that we might end up in the crossfire a bit there as well. So that was that point. Which other one did you have? It
relationship between the states and the MDB.
Yeah, that's the key point, because we're a federated system. We rely on getting that process working.
And the one
Yeah, look, so risk assignment, South Australia. Yeah, look, South Australia, I hate to get down to that parochial line because I'm from New South Wales, and we fire shots across the border, which is just totally unproductive. But and one of the things that's often fired at us, I suppose, is that, we're the bad users of water. Well, I can remember about 10 years ago down to the swamp irrigators down there, and not trying to be too hard, we've all got our bits we've got to improve, but one of the processes there was you pump it straight out of the river and you run straight back in. You don't even measure it, so that sort of sticks in the gullet. But I will say that South Australia have some of the finest pressurised systems in the world. And I suppose one of the things that's concerned me a little bit, a lot of the things, Lake Hindmarsh, the island, the marinas, it is one of the playgrounds, and so I think we're all guilty of talking the talk, but walking the walk's a lot harder. So I don't mean to have a pot shot at South Australia. We've all got our failures, and we hope that we spread the pain right across. And that's why it's got to be.
Okay, Rhonda?
Thanks. Look, I feel I have to address a couple of those. In fact, there are quite a few of your issues, Laurie, with some great suggestions for future issues, which I agree to, but a couple of points of a few myths there. So first of all, on the states, it's absolutely right, and I made this point that collaboration is the only way forward, and that we have been intensely working with the states over the last couple of months, in fact, in building that collaborative arrangement. And I think we are moving we are making progress. So I'm far more confident than Laurie. What I think you're probably referring to is the budget scenario, which is actually not about the basin plan. In fact, the budget cuts that New South Wales and South Australia, well, New South Wales has made and South Australia has announced, they are cuts to the running of the river, basically, to the programs that are collectively managed by the states. They make the decisions. We're just their agent to implement it. Most of the funding and the activities are throughout the basin. The MDBA is just the central coordinating, directing hydrologists and so on, managing it in that way. Most of the activity is there. So they're basically cuts to their own services and to their own programs, assets that are owned by them. So it's actually quite, they don't, you can't sort of separate things absolutely in this world, but certainly the basin plan work and going to the next step on that, I'm pretty optimistic that is working quite well and moving along. And on the lower lakes, just to be absolutely clear, from the way that we've done all of our work and scientific basis underpinning it, it wasn't driven by the lower lakes. In fact, it was driven by all of the hydrological sites that we had across the basin, and their water needs were determined first, and basically the lower lakes needs were picked up by the outflows of all of those, so they ended up with the residual of meeting the needs first. So it was certainly in the basis of which we did all the work. It was the environmental needs of the whole basin. The political story was a bit different.
So there are more questions than we have time, and that hand's been up for quite a while, so we'll make this the last question.
My name is James Houston. We're a primary producer upstream of the Hume Weir and the Upper Murray. Just wondering what the basin plan's doing for the top end of the river health. What we're noticing in our neck of the woods is by the time we've got environmental flows, irrigation flows, generating flows for electricity, and then on top of that, a lot of floodwaters as well. We've got millions of tonnes of soil of prime grazing land ending up into the river, ending up into the Lake Hume. When we discuss that and raise that with our North East Catchment Management Authority, they handball that on, saying that the Hume Weir is acting as a sediment trap, so there's no salinity issues happening downstream and blah, blah, blah. But I think the irrigators need to be involved in that part of the discussion, because when they're talking about the Hume Weir having 100% capacity, that's decreasing all the time because it's filling up from the bottom. And if the irrigators are wanting to get water, the amount of water that they're actually getting out of the dam that's being stated as 100% full,
Well, let's
decreasing all the time.
Let's invite panel comment.
I think there's probably two issues to raise there. One is about the environmental management, the health of the upwaters, the upstream of Hume, and the headwaters in pretty much most of the catchments of the basin are, in terms of water extraction, reasonably fine. And in fact, all of the modelling we did, which is only on water use, certainly showed that to be the case. But as Bill said, that water is just sort of one part of the environmental health of those areas, and a lot of the issues you talk about, I think, are those broader natural resource management ones. As to whether the silting up of the Hume Dam is creating a significant effect on capacity, actually, I don't know if I can answer that. I don't know, Bill, if you have anything. This is it's not been an issue that's been raised with us, but it'll certainly take it on and see if I can find an answer.
Similarly, I don't know the answer, but my perception would be that it's unlikely to be a major issue, that the majority of the sediment that's moving will be fairly fine and will stay in suspension and go through. I'm not aware of large sedimentation rates in Hume, but I guess I'd be very interested to look at any data around that issue.
They're spending a lot of money reinforcing the wall.
You've spent a lot of money reinforcing the wall because of the instability of the dam site and the fact that it moved downstream for a while. But I don't think that was anything to do with sedimentation. But it's certainly in many parts of the world, sedimentation of reservoirs is a huge issue, and higher energy, coarser sediment environments. But I don't think it's a huge issue for our inland reservoirs. It is for some of our more coastal ones. But
it is becoming a huge issue for us because we are losing large tracts of land. Tons of soil are ending up in the river.
Yeah, so it might be a conversation that can be followed up, through the commission. But I guess I would come back to what I said. I think the integration with NRM, catchment management, and other issues is important here. But I think it's much of the water issues for the plan are downstream of the reservoirs. The only other thing is because of how we're likely to manage the reservoirs differently, there is a whole lot of flood risks as well, and that we may be having reservoirs fuller more of the time. But with a longer term trend